Good morning, everyone, wherever you are. Happy return of NFL Day. This is Doug Farrar, editor of Touchdown Wire, with Mark Schofield, our five-tool guy, and data champion, which we're going to do in a second. Woohoo! Tonight, we're recording this Thursday morning. Tonight, there is actual football. Now, it's Mason Rudolph and Ben DiNucci football, but it's also Najee Harris and Micah Parsons football, and the Steelers Cowboys Hall of Fame game. So, to celebrate that occasion, it's the return of Doug and Mark on the pod, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you find your fine podcasts, you can find them here, and we'll have all that up on the Touchdown Wire site, of course, as we always do. Before we get into what I want to do for this particular podcast, Mark, tell me about the Sports Info Solutions Data Challenge. I am a huge SIS fan. We use their data all the time. And you, sir, with it was Keegan Abdu, who I know, and two other guys I don't know. There was a SIS data challenge, and you guys won. It's so cool.
Glorious victory.
Glorious victory.
It was a fantastic sort of process and event. I was just honored to be a part of this team. The SIS data challenge this year, they had actually two different tracks. One was a sports betting track. The other, which we did, was the general football one. And there were two sort of questions or prompts. The first being which route concept or combination was the most popular in the NFL last year, and then what route combinations are most successful against which coverages. And they gave you a bunch of their data. So the group I was a part of, like you said, Keegan Abdo, Joe Ferriola, who are two guys at NFL Next Gen, Dr. Bud Davis, who's a geologist by trade, and myself. We got together to do this. And basically what we did, I say we, and sort of the royal we, because Bud was a driver of a lot of this. First, we built a football route concept dictionary. And that's a lot of the stuff that I helped with, Mills, Portland, Stick, what are the general route concepts? And then we looked at the data, because the data you had would tell you like what receiver, 1, 2, 3 on both sides ran which routes. And so we used that route dictionary we built to then try to come up with that initial answer to that question. And we could only identify 70% or so of the plays. So the next thing we did, which Bud did, which is just brilliant, it's awesome. He built what's called a convoluted neural network, which basically is machine learning, where we put graphics of route concepts in front of the machine and gave it the opportunity to identify anywhere from 1 to 3 potential route concepts it could be. And we had some examples, and you can find our presentation on Twitter, online, and various other places. But
just to break in, so with the CNN, what you're doing is this is a drawing of a slant. And then with the SIS data, obviously you can look in the data hub and go, this is, receivers on slants, receivers on digs, whatever. I'm fascinated, because you and I have both done studies on individual routes, whether it's, quarterbacks, receivers, coverage, whatever. The whole idea of being able to identify route concepts in a metric sense is like,
and like for example, we taught it that, smash was corner curl, right? Corner from the inside, hit your curl from the outside receiver. Then we also told that flat 7 smash, the little variation of it, where you have a corner from the outside guy and then a flat route from the inside receiver. Well, this model picked up an example of flats, what it called flat 7 smash, where you had corner on the outside and then a pivot or whip route on the inside receiver, which gets you to the same sort of spaces on the field with the corner and the flat. You're still high-low in that outside defender. It's just that inside receiver got there from a different way, and the machine picked that up. It also picked up an example of Haas, hitch seam. It had like a deeper comeback route, and it said, oh, this is Haas, which if you look at the depth in the graphic, it matched up. And so that allowed us to sort of that bucket of 30% of plays that we couldn't identify with the route dictionary. It allowed us, rather than just tossing those aside, to incorporate the bulk of those in there. Now, there were some false positives, and, there are sort of some sample size issues. We stripped out running back routes because we weren't sure if running backs were given free releases or.
Although I thought, just to break it, I thought Rick Neuheisel, who was on the panel, had a really interesting point about, well, if you cut out running back routes, you're eliminating when running backs leave it open for receivers on that side, or vice versa, where the receiver, runs a go and takes a safety out, and the whole idea is wheel.
Right. And, another example of that, it was a route concept that we thought we were going to see more of, but really didn't, at least through the machine learning and the route dictionary, was Texas, where you have slot on the go, and then the receiver runs the choice or the option route. That only gets tagged, I think, like 6 times out of, 17,000 players or whatever. And so we thought, there's something wonky here. So we sort of stripped that out. So running back routes was kind of a weakness by stripping those out. And of course, there are obviously situations where the running back is a primary read on the play, whether it's wheel or Texas or halfback option. And so, that's a weakness. There were some sample size issues, but once we were able to get a pretty good chunk of these plays identified, that's when we did some really fun stuff. Like we looked at, obviously, routes concepts versus different coverages. And again, sample size issues. You might see, Dino, however you're going to term that, against cover 4, like a handful of times. But still some interesting stuff in terms of expected points added, route concepts versus different coverages. We looked at middle of the field open versus middle of the field closed, which we thought was important, trying to get into the mind of the quarterback, because, quarterback gets to the line of scrimmage, he's trying to make that read. A lot of concepts, a lot of decisions are made. Middle of the field open, you're reading this concept. Middle field closed, you're going to read that concept. So we wanted to sort of tease that out a bit. I looked a lot at RPOs, what concepts worked best as an RPO. And again, we came up with a ton of sample size issues there. Like Dino, maybe it was our best play, almost our best play overall, double posts. And it was one of the best plays on an RPO, but it was run, I think, 6 times. And so we kind of,
Sean McVay probably ran 5 of those in the goal line.
McVay and the Chargers were another team that ran it a lot, which makes sense with Herbert. So we didn't really incorporate that in our presentation at the judges panel, but we did have that stuff sort of in the presentation, the initial submission. And that's something that I'm curious to watch, next season going forward. But it was a tremendous experience. Bud and Keegan and Joey are absolutely brilliant. I learned a ton from them. It was fun to sort of be a part of it. Now I've surrounded myself with code and books, so I'm going to, become even more dangerous, I guess, as this goes along.
He's going to learn R and just take
it real. But it was just a great, process. And props to Joe Andruzzi and Joseph C. They were the other 2 finalists. They were each an individual submission. And we were lucky as a group because we could break things up and, have eyes and ears to bounce things off of. Doing something like this on your own is a monumental Herculean effort. So the 2 of them should certainly be commended. You can find them on Twitter as well. They did incredible work. And Joe Andruzzi won the NFL's Data Bowl months ago. So he's certainly brilliant at this. And Joe C's on Twitter at Patriots Stats R, I think. So obviously I'm going to be hitting him up for stuff over the next couple of months. But a great little experience. It was fun. Learned a ton. I'm going to apply some of this stuff going forward. And it was a great little event, and it raised money for the Boys and Girls Club. And it's always good to help the community as well.
Nice. Well, me as your annoying editor immediately, okay, can you do an article on route concepts?
Yeah, I mean, I've already started sketching that out. Again, there will be sample size issues, but of course, it's always interesting. The reason why I wanted to do this originally was because I kind of wanted to test. If you remember last March or whatever, I wrote that future of offensive football piece.
Yep.
And a lot of my idea there was, okay, teams are playing too high, daring you to run. Sometimes they'll spin it to single high, but you're going to want concepts that work well against too high. And I came up with post out. That's the dream concept, right? Because it can stress cover 4, cover 2, whatever. And we found that was one of our worst performing route concepts. So what I thought was amazing was to take sort of a film theory and then test it through data analysis. And now I've got ideas of maybe why it's better at the college level and the pro level. Maybe it worked better. Again, small sample size, but when you ran post out as an RPO, it worked better. And that probably is due to having that curl flat defender, that overhang defender. Perhaps if he's involved in the run fit, he's late to buzz out to the flat so you can throw the out route a little bit easier. But so, I mean, I think it's cool to like take an assumption or an idea or a hypothesis from film and now be able to test it with data.
So you're aligning film and metrics. You're never going to be a hot take artist that way. Did Jay Cutler, it would be interesting to go back to previous seasons. Did Jay Cutler run pout more than anyone else?
I'm betting. I'm absolutely betting he did.
All right. So very cool stuff. And I'm fascinated to see where you guys take the route combinations idea, because that's something we don't, I mean, we maybe teams do in alignment with PFF Ultimate or whatever in just their own studies, but for the the end user, for what we do, I've not seen that out there, so it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly cool. And it's, I know there have been studies like what individual route works against best coverages, but I think that's sort of the next step. Like, you don't just call individual routes, you're going to call concepts, like you'll have stick, you'll have Mills, Portland, whatever. And the idea
I have Mike McCarthy on line one. He disagrees.
He's just called tosser, all slants. Yeah. So I think that's a good way to look at it. And the other thing that I'm really fascinated, we again ran into sample size issues, but what pair of route combinations works best? Like we found one that was good was dagger, and I think outs or tosser.
So this is one to one side of the field and one to the other.
Yeah,
which so you got more 3x1 and more spread sets. That makes sense. You have
plus,
it up.
What I was curious, and I had that sort of response teed up, but I didn't really get asked it. And I tried to work it into an answer, I think, to one of Seth Walder's questions, who's again brilliant. All the judges are just incredible.
ESPN guy.
But I think, that sort of dagger to one side, West Coast short concept to the other side is a good example of quarterbacks making a decision sort of pre-snap or right at the snap. Like, okay, I've got man coverage, I've got cover zero, I can take the deep shot on that inside seam, that inside go on dagger. Oh, no, they're playing off, they're dropping, it's cover four, I got to sort of check this down, take what the defense gives me. That's sort of what quarterbacks are doing. That's what they're going to do on a given play. I see one coverage, I'll read it this way. I see a different coverage, I'll read it this way. Whether it's a man versus zone read or middle field open, middle field closed. And that's why you're going to have sometimes half, what we call, half field reads. It's really, they have options full field, sideline to sideline, but they'll eventually read one side of the field based on the defensive coverages. So going forward, when we get more data, I want to really see, okay, what concept pairings work best? Is it really just explosive to one side, sort of check down, or what we call on schedule to the other? Do mirrored concepts work best, where you've got mirrored curl flat? I didn't make the joke last night, but in the rehearsals that we did, I had the line keyed up. There isn't a problem that Matt Nagy thinks, mirrored curl flat can't solve. I mean, he called mirrored curl flat all the time. Do mirrored concepts really work better, or is it better to have explosive one side on schedule to the other? So that's that next year.
My first thought with the left side, right side is like, okay, cover six is becoming the thing.
Yeah.
How do you beat quarter, half? And not just with one route, but with the whole thing.
I mean, it's really you've got to hope you've got your cover four beater to the right side of the field and then your cover two beater to the other side of the field. Because if you guess wrong, or they, spit it on you, where suddenly you're running a concept designed to beat cover four, to the cover two side, that could be where you sort of get into trouble as an offense. And, that's where, advanced film study comes in, because if you see, okay, quarters, good, dyno double post is a good way to beat quarters, because you get outside leverage, corner, trying to run a, cover a post route that's breaking to the inside, and that inside post takes the half field safety away. But against cover two, you can sort of match that better. And of course, that also gets us into variations and matching and all sorts of stuff, and my head starts to hurt.
Yeah. Well, all the option routes, and we could be a whole podcast about just this, which we may do later on. But since football is back, baby, we wanted to do both you and I did power rankings, preseason power rankings. You did yours on, was it July 21st?
Yeah.
Mine went up yesterday. A few things have changed since you put yours up. The Colts are injury plagued. The Vikings are even stupider about COVID. But what I wanted to do, I didn't even think that was possible, but they are. Anyway, wanted to go through our individual power rankings, see where we had the same teams aligned and where we were different. There are a few where you are much higher on some teams and I'm much higher on some teams. And just want to kind of run through kind of a good primer into the season, kind of where you and I each see teams standing as the season begins, just individually and collectively. So I wanted to start with number 32, Texans. I mean, I don't know what to say here. This is the worst roster in the NFL if Deshaun Watson is on the team, which is kind of an indictment because he's a top 5 quarterback. and then he ain't going to be there. I don't know where he's going to be. He's not going to the Eagles, by the way. There are all these rumors about the Eagles are not going to trade multiple first round picks for a guy who may not play this year. And if they get him, the Wentz dead cap is 30 plus million. And then Deshaun Watson's hit this year is like 15 million. They would be spending $50 million in cap this year on two guys who will not play for them this season and give up multiple first round picks. I can think of people who would do that, like Bill O'Brien and Matt Millen. I don't think Howie's one of those guys. So let's just dispense with that.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that there's still some sort of smoke around there, but it's not smart business when you're going to be allocating that kind of cap space, and you've already got, you're not in great shape with respect to the cap. So to allocate that kind of cap space to two quarterbacks who won't be there. And the other thing to keep in mind here, with Wentz's injury, it's looking more likely like, the Eagles aren't getting that first round pick from Indianapolis because he's not going to hit that 75% of the team snaps. And so, you won't have an extra first round pick to then flip for Deshaun Watson. So yeah, I don't think this happens.
Not going to happen. So Texans are 32nd in both of our power rankings. Not really surprised there. I was kind of going through the roster in my power ranking. Okay, how many Texans players are like league average or above? Because the roster looks like those mid 2000 Mariners teams where Howard Lincoln and Chuck Armstrong said, "Hey, if we get a bunch of unspectacular little gritty guys, 9 Willie Bloomquists will be great." And of course they weren't because, they're the Mariners. Tyrod Taylor can get things done in the right system, but we don't really know what Houston system will be. David Johnson, 3 years ago. Brandon Cooks, sure. Larry Tunsil, yeah. Whitney Merciless and Malik Collins. I like Malik Collins. Merciless still has some juice. Zach Cunningham might be their best player. He's a linebacker. That doesn't help.
And he's an off-ball linebacker.
Yeah. So they've got maybe Justin Reed. They've got 6 or 7 guys who are league average or above, and everything else is just oatmeal. I don't know what to say here. I mean, we all know what the Texans are.
Yep.
31, we both had the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I find this interesting because in our previous podcast, you had opined that this might be a playoff team. I don't see it at all. And most of my concern is with Urban Meyer. And just, that's part of it. They were 1-15 team last year. You can't build that overnight. What are your thoughts about why they're still 31st?
I mean, it's a lot of it, Doug, is like, I have to see it sort of come together, and what we've seen and heard so far out of Jacksonville training camp, I'm not sort of convinced that it will come together. My hope was between the cap space, between the draft capital that they had, they'd be able to turn this around quickly because they had like 6 picks in the top 90. They had a ton of cap space. I'm not so sure they allocated those resources as well as they could have. I think there are signs for optimism. You look at, obviously, we know what Trevor Lawrence is going to be. I think he's going to be a legitimate good quarterback, great quarterback early in his career. I'm still curious about how they're going to use Travis Etienne. They might have gotten something great in Walker Little. Reports,
now,
and our colleague Lawyer Fitzpatrick, you guys were both extremely high on him. You're hearing really good things about him. So maybe he plays himself into the starting lineup. Who knows?
Like 70 snaps in 2019, and then last year he opted out. But if you go back to his 17 and 18 tape, obviously Sewell and Slater are better overall players. You could argue that Vera Tucker or a few other guys. But as far as pure pass blocking, and I said this during our draft podcast, Walker Little has no equal in this class as a pure pass blocker, running the arc, dealing with counters, all that stuff. I believe Lori, hint, spoiler, is working on a Walker Little piece for us right now. So that's cool.
Yeah.
I think he might wind up being the second best pick in this class.
Yeah. And so there are good signs, but then there's the Urban Meyer factor. And you were a bit cooler on the Urban Meyer factor. I was a bit more.
I'm in the freezer with this. Yeah, I've seen this before, where you get the guy who Belichick loves him and 4 other NFL coaches love him, primarily because, and Saban's smart enough to know what this is. They get NCAA intel. Guys like Belichick get NCAA intel from guys like Meyer and Saban because their teams are just freaking loaded. Belichick doesn't talk to Urban Meyer because he thinks, oh, you'd be a wonderful NFL coach. That's not what, that, in my opinion, that's not why they're doing it. So to have this guy, oh, he's so NFL respected, so it'd be such an easy transition. Well, most of the time it's not.
Yeah. And so, as a result of that, I've kind of, I ranked them 31st, just like you did. And, the idea that they're a playoff team now, maybe look, Indianapolis seems to be a little shaky right now with the Wentz situation and the Quentin Nelson situation. We know what Houston is. Maybe there's a chance they surprise, but I've sort of walked back from that sort of, this is a potential playoff team stance.
Yeah. Number 30 is the first time we differ. You have the Detroit Lions at 30. I have the Carolina Panthers. Explain yourself.
I'm more optimistic about Sam Darnold in Carolina than perhaps I should be. And a lot of that is the Joe Brady influence. But then I look at, we know what Jared Goff is. Like, I think we know exactly what Jared Goff is as a quarterback. I did a
podcast with Aaron and Mike from FO last week, and how I described Goff is he's a quarterback who not only has a very low ceiling, but he has concussed himself hitting his head on that ceiling. And that's what the Lions have. And their best receiver is Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah.
I don't care how good your offensive line is. You're not going to win a lot of games with that.
Yeah. And so I'm just, Detroit's a couple of years away. I'm a bit more hopeful that Sam Darnold from under the Adam Gase shadow is going to be better, but perhaps that's misguided. It's maybe a belief in Joe Brady. It's also a belief in Terrace Marshall. I was a huge fan of his coming out, but if there was going to be an ideal situation for him to go to, it's Carolina and Joe Brady. Sure. And the reports of him are rather high. So I look at that and I say, and I like what Carolina's building on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm a bit higher on Carolina than Detroit right now.
I like their defense. Their secondary was garbage last year, but they got J.C. Horn. That's good. Remember that Phil Snow's defense had Aaron Rodgers saying late in the season, oh, that was strange.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers didn't know what he was seeing. So, yeah.
Right.
My problem with Darnold is there are a few things that I look at with college quarterbacks where I think he's not going to fix this in the NFL. And you can make minor mechanical adjustments. But Darnold at USC, I did a lot of tape on him back then. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm going, his upper body and his lower body do not communicate.
No,
this is not. Now, of course, Adam Gase isn't going to fix that, but and this from evaluating quarterbacks, you have to take the idiot who's calling the plays out of the picture, and you have to isolate the quarterback when you're doing these sort of cross-team analysis things. And with Darnold, I mean, he will make spectacular plays, but it's not driven by mechanical consistency. He's got arm talent. He's got, I assume he's smart enough to see what he's, to know what he's looking at. But when you are mechanically inconsistent to that degree, you are going to be a combination of explosive plays and mystery meat. And that's just kind of where I stand with him. And that's why I have them so low. And I get into this a lot in my power rankings right now. If you don't have a quarterback who can consistently create explosive plays, because it is an absolutely explosive play league, creating them and stopping them, most important of all, I'm kind of learning the more I go into this. If you don't have that guy, I don't care who you are. I don't care what else you have. And the other thing I'll point out, you've had a quarterback transition from Cam Newton to Teddy Bridgewater to Sam Darnold when you're Matt Rule. Is there a plan here? Because I don't see it.
That there isn't a plan.
They're kind of throwing darts at guys, hoping that something works at the game's most important position. I don't know what to say about that.
And they had an opportunity to address quarterback. They chose not to in the draft. I do think that with respect to Darnold and his mechanics, this will be sort of the ultimate test of Jordan Palmer.
Yes.
Has been working with Darnold. Last year it was Josh Allen. And look, there are a number of reasons why Josh Allen had the year 3 leap. You can make a case that it was Stephon Diggs. You can make a case that it was the consistency with offensive coordinator Brian Dable. But I don't think you can over account for the work that Josh Allen himself did, partly with, Jordan Palmer. And right alongside him is Sam Darnold. It's so we might see sort of the fruits of that labor out from the Gase shadow with a different play caller, with different offensive weapons, with I'd say better offensive weapons than he had with the Jets. And so maybe, I mean, I'm still hopeful.
I would say also that Allen's ceiling is several floors higher than Darnold's.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Darnold's floor, I mean, Allen coming out of Wyoming, who the hell knew what he was going to be? Darnold's floor might be a little bit higher, but we're not talking about the same guy as far as ceiling, in my opinion.
No, absolutely
not even close. Not even in the zip code. Kind of like Garoppolo and Trey Lance, which we'll talk about later. Because, oh boy, that's coming like a train down the track. Okay, 29 in our power rankings. I went with the Detroit Lions. You went with the Cincinnati Bengals. I think we talked about the Lions enough. It's Jared Goff. And I will just say that I don't think Jared Goff is their long-term guy. I wouldn't be surprised if they're drafting a quarterback early with one of those Stafford picks. I think, honestly, the more tape study I've done on Goff, and I did some in the offseason just to kind of, because when I have a profoundly negative opinion on a player, it makes you want to go back. Okay, is it just, am I getting clouded in my opinions, and I'm just sort of extrapolating things that don't exist? And the more I watch Goff, the more I think this guy could be out of the league in 3 years. It's bad.
Yeah.
And as I was talking to Aaron and Mike from FO last week and on the podcast, and the things that made him special 3 years ago: play action, motion, the 21 personnel, the tight splits, all that stuff that made him special in 2018, he has regressed massively in all those departments. Like the stuff that helped you, you now suck at. What do you do with that? Because Anthony Lynn, God bless him, is not Sean McVay.
No,
I think he's screwed. I think he's done.
I mean, I think they're hoping to catch lightning in a bottle, but they're expecting to draft a quarterback next draft cycle. Like, I'm with you. I don't think that Goff is the long-term answer. I almost wonder if that Super Bowl broke him and he's just a shell of what he was that season, because all the stuff you can try to scheme up for him now, it hasn't made him the decisive, quarterback that he needs to be. And, when they made that trade for Stafford, that was what it came down to for me, was McVay will finally have a quarterback that at least can make up his mind quickly. Like, if nothing else, that's what, Matthew Stafford, of course he offers more, but he offers that, and that's huge.
Well, it was the Detroit game late in that season where teams started to figure him out. And then the Bears game, which apparently was the thing that made Sean McVay hire Brandon Staley.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just a Super Bowl. It wasn't just the Patriots saying, okay, after the helmet checks off 15 seconds, then we can just, flip coverage. And
it was
like 5 straight games.
Yeah. It was Detroit. It was Chicago. It was Philadelphia. And then
Philadelphia. Oh God, his red zone throws against Philly were, that's an undraftable player in that instance.
And it was basically ignore the jet motion, ignore the eye candy.
Yes.
We're going to play quarters. We're going to make Jared Goff have to read it. There you go.
He's never been the same since. Now, when you can take a few elemental concepts and mess a guy up like that for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Your power rankings at 29, Cincinnati Bengals.
Are we worried about Burrow?
Well, okay. I had the Bengals at 28. Here's what I'll say. Through the first 11 weeks of the 2020 season, per Sports Info Solutions, who we of course like, no quarterback had more 0 to 3-step drops than Joe Burrow. And even with all that quick game, Burrow suffered 26 sacks and 108 pressures. Only Wentz had more sacks on short drops. Only Josh Allen was pressured more often. Then the knee injury happened. Well, their line now, because they went with Jamar Chase instead of Sewell or Slater, they got Jonah Williams, who's great, can't stay on the field. We don't know if he's tackle or guard. We don't know if he's going to be on the field. You got, guys like Riley Reif with talk about low ceilings, and a bunch of guys. I mean, Bobby Hart's finally out of there, thank God. But they don't. It's like, what are you doing? Are you trying to turn him into Greg Cook? Do you just love that story so much that you're going to have the next guy? Am I worried about Burrow? Yeah, I'm worried about his getting his ass plastered, turning into the next Russell Wilson, except he's not built like Warwick Dunn like Russell Wilson is. And, this is a problem. And their line isn't any better than it was last year, unless Jonah Williams turns into like Joe Thomas and Riley Reif, outplays his career. and these other guys step up. I don't care how many receivers you have. I don't care. Jamar Chase could be the next Steve Smith. I don't give a crap. It doesn't matter how great he is when he's running a post and his quarterback is dying, writhing in pain after his 5th sack of the day. It's just stupid.
Yeah.
I don't even want to get into Lou Amarino's defense because whatever. But they lost two of their 3 best players in Carl Lawson and William Jackson III, and they replaced them with inferior guys in Trey Hendrickson and Chidobe Awuzie. So yeah, this might be Zach Taylor's swan song. Yeah. Not that it's all his fault, but this could be it for that.
I think so. And it's not like you take training camp reports with a grain of salt, but the reports out of Cincinnati right now are not good. I mean,
that whole thing, I read that, I think he's getting himself back into shape, and I'm not going to ascribe any credibility to that until I see him on the field, see him in games. I don't know what their plan is for him as far as that goes, but yeah. Are you worried about Burrow? Hell yeah, you're worried about Burrow. This is where we are.
Yeah.
28. Let's see. 28, I had the Bengals. 28, you had the Jets.
And with respect to the Jets, I love what they're doing. You can see the Patriots thing over my shoulder. I am a lifelong Patriots fan. The accent gives it away. But I think the Jets are building something that could be special. I love the Vera Tucker selection. I love Becton, Vera Tucker as Wilson's blind side for the next 8 years. I think that's fantastic.
Yep.
Again, try not to overreact, but everything about Elijah Moore sounds incredible.
Well, we said in our post-draft podcast, the Zach Wilson, Elijah Moore combination, that's going to be nuts. And it's already proven to be so. That's just a natural fit in so many different ways.
Yeah. It's so, and even on the defensive side of the ball, I think the Carl Lawson addition is nice. The Jets are probably still going to struggle this year, but I don't expect them to be like 28 for long.
No. Here's what I think. Here's what I think.
Good.
Here's what I think the 2021 Jets are to a large degree. They're the 2019 Dolphins.
Yeah.
You punt Adam Gase, you get a highly respected defensive guy to be your head coach, a guy who can establish culture, keep everyone accountable. You get a good offensive guy in there and you start to build it. Well, the Dolphins, everyone thought tankathon, and they almost made the playoffs the next year. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen with the Jets, but the paradigm is very similar after the, 50-pound drum of toxic waste that is Adam Gase. Now we're getting smart. Yeah, I put an Elijah Moore highlight in my Jets power rankings, and it's like, holy crap, this kid is something else.
Yeah, they're going to be good. They're going to be good.
Yep. 27. When I was doing mine, where did I have them? I think I had the Raiders in the low 20s. You had them at 27. And I was thinking about it, like I pushed the Falcons up, and I'll explain why. I almost pushed the Raiders down. They've had 7 first-round picks in the Gruden era, and really outside of Josh Jacobs and Colton Miller, it took a while. They got a lot of guys playing third team. They got guys who aren't on the team anymore. And I know they like to think that they're smarter than everyone else, and we're going to do it our way. Well, your way stinks. Your coach is 19 and 29. Your coach with a 10-year, $100 million contract. Now, if they can't get over 500 this year, we all know that Mayock's going to be the one who takes the bullet. But I don't think and I have a great deal of respect for Mike Mayock. I really do. I have a great deal of respect for John Gruden as an offensive play caller. Everything else, who knows? But I don't think we talk enough about the ineptitude of this front office from a draft perspective, because it's bad. I mean, I had the list of, let me bring it up here. Yeah, I had the Raiders 22nd. So you got Colton Miller, Cleveland Farrell, Josh Farrell, they took 4th? Josh Jacobs, who's really the guy. Jonathan Abram, he's been hurt. Ruggs, I just don't think they used well. Damon Arnett, which that was a risky pick when it happened. And I think Casey Hayward is playing ahead of him right now. Damon's with the 2s. Farrell's with the 2s. A lot of these guys are with the 2s. And Alex Leatherwood 17th overall. He was my OT 10. So whatever. I just, I had him at 22. And in retrospect, I saw you at 27. I'm like, yeah, it's probably where I should have put him.
Yeah, I mean, like I have the Vince Lombardi, what the hell is going on out there clip. Yep. I just don't know what to make of this organization right now. I do think this is trending towards Mike Mayock is gone. And there were even rumblings of tension when the Leatherwood pick was made that somebody might get fired. Now, that was probably just somebody firing off a tweet in the middle of the night after the first night of the draft. But this seems like a roster and an organization that is just going in the wrong direction. And bad mistakes have compounded more bad mistakes, and it's just a mess.
27, I had the Jets. I think we're pretty much in the same place with those guys. 26, I have the Chicago Bears. 26, you have the Atlanta Falcons. I will say this about, for the first time since dinosaurs roamed the earth, the Bears have a legitimate quarterback prospect, no real dings, and the skill set to eventually place himself atop the league or near enough to it in Justin Fields. So, of course, because of the Bears, now Allen Robinson is going to play more in the slot, and their outside guys are Damiere Byrd, and you remember Damiere Byrd, Darnell Mooney, and whoever else. And we've talked about Matt Nagy's interesting route ideas. I mean, is there the potential that Fields could be not ruined, but really curtailed in this? Or if Nagy and Ryan Pace are on the bubble, and God knows they should be at this point, do they overinvest in Andy Dalton because he's quote unquote safe?
I don't know. I mean, you could see it going the other way where they might run Fields out there and say, look, we've got something here, like give us time to develop this kid. The issue is, do you trust Matt Nagy to develop a quarterback? I mean, and what he did with Mitchell Trubisky, it was, I'm just going to call him Merritt Carl flat. Like that's all he could run. Now, maybe that was it. Maybe it was, he couldn't get Trubisky to do anything. So he was just,
that's not true, because Trubisky was really good in boot. He was really good with RPOs. He was really good in specific things that Nagy could have built up, and he didn't.
Yeah.
And that's more the coach trying to superimpose his limited sort of bull crap, whatever, on whoever he gets. So I'm looking at Fields and I'm like, well, this isn't automatic.
Yeah, it's not automatic. And I think there are concerns that, Fields could get sort of ruined in this situation, but I'm still so high on Justin Fields anyway, that I think you often wonder, can a quarterback overcome a bad situation? A young quarterback overcome a bad situation? Darnold perhaps couldn't. Maybe I think Fields can.
Most guys can't. I think
most guys can't.
Yeah. I'm not questioning Fields' talent at all. And I was the one screaming all over the place when people were questioning his intellect, because we all knew what that was. So 26, you have the Falcons. I have the Falcons at 21. I'd like to hear your take on where Atlanta is.
I don't know where they are. And like, that's the question that I have. And that's why I've kind of dropped them down a bit, because an offense with Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, Julio Jones, Matt Ryan, like I'd go all in on that offense. I think that's something special. An offense that then removes Julio Jones from that tells me, where do you think you're going? Are you starting a rebuild here? Are you starting to try to get resources in place to make a run at a quarterback next year? Like, and if you were going to do that, why pass on a quarterback this year? You had your choice of Fields or, Jones at 4, at least. Maybe you weren't sold on either of those guys. That's why I sort of slid them down, because it seems to me like they don't know what they're doing. They're two ships passing into the night almost.
Well, they restructured Matt Ryan's contract to bulldoze it up to the next 2 years, and the cap hit is prohibitive to where you'd almost not want to play a rookie. And in this day and age, you don't sit a quarterback for 2 years. You don't do that. Aaron Rodgers is the last guy that will ever happen to.
Yeah. So that's where I'm curious, you've got them higher. Like, what is it with Atlanta that gives you hope?
Well, they're 4-12 in 2020. And yeah, they lost Julio Jones in the offseason, but they ranked 17th in total DVOA. They're 21st in offensive DVOA and 14th in defensive DVOA. And they're the Falcons, so they lose in these agonizing ways. They're teams where they're better. I mean, Bill Parcells said you are what your record says you are. Bill is also smart enough to know that's not always the case. I think the Falcons were better than their record. And the thing about Julio Jones, and oh my God, Julio Jones is out. Well, Julio Jones is out for half the season last year with various injuries, which allowed Calvin Ridley to become the most prolific deep receiver in the NFL. And I don't think Kyle Pitts was an absolute freakazoid monster at Florida. And you and I have discussed this. He's going to be even better in the NFL because he's not got Kyle Trask throwing in these stupid helium balls. And why again did the Buccaneers take him in the second round? Now you got Matt Ryan. Now you got Arthur Smith doing the stuff with Pitts and Hayden Hurst. And we know how good Smith is with 2 and 3 tight end sets. I think one of the things that very few people are talking about with the Falcons, and if you look at the Titans last year and how their defense just split the bit, Dean Pease is Atlanta's defensive coordinator. That might be worth 2 or 3 wins right there.
Yeah.
Because that guy's a flipping genius. And everywhere he goes, it's multiple and it's he made Lamar's head explode in that playoff game. That was Dean Pease who did that. So you've got 2 of the more schematically astute guys running your offense and your defense. I'm not going to pretend that Atlanta has a bunch of, all pros on defense, but you can coach that up to a degree. I have them at 21. I don't think they're going to win the division. I don't think they're a playoff team. And it is an interesting discussion, if they just suck this year, if they go 2-15, then there's a rebuild. Well, what if they go 7-10? What if there's enough, what if they win their last 5 games and everyone goes, oh, well, they don't have to rebuild when they actually do. Sometimes those late surges can get you in trouble, and that may happen with the Falcons. I just think they're going to be better than people assume they are.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I just kind of was the Jones thing really threw me.
Well, I'm not going to say he isn't what he was, because when he's healthy, he's every bit what he was. He's DK Metcalf's dad. He's ridiculous. And, but he wasn't there a lot, and he hasn't been, so for the Falcons to then take Calvin Ridley and make him Deshaun Jackson and have it work was kind of interesting. And then you have the 2 tight end sets. Hurst is good. Pitts, I mean, if I were to do an over-under on offensive rookie of the year right now, I'd probably go with Pitts because of the level to which he was an ungodly matchup nightmare, and he had to adjust for a really, pardon my French, shitty quarterback in Kyle Trask. Those deep balls were horrific. So it's a whole different deal. He's not coming from like an Alabama elevated offense and, to Adam Gase. It's kind of the inverse option. So
right.
See how that goes. So 25. I have the Giants. You have the Eagles. There you go. I had the Eagles. Looking here. Page is stuck. Come on. We're trying to advertise you, Touchdown Wire. While I wait for the page to roll, tell me about the Eagles. Now, yeah.
I mean, a lot of people say
I have them at 23rd. I think we're in the same boat. My question is rebuild or retool, and I think it should be a rebuild.
Yeah, and it will come down to Jalen Hurts, and he did some things that were okay last year. He was impressive in that debut, but even in that debut against the Saints, when they simplified things, they were still slow reads, slow decisions, like glacially slow at times.
Yeah.
There was this great example where he hits Goddard on an out route. He had go flat to one side, and he had, I think, Mills to the other side where he had the post. It was against the cover 6 look. The post was open. He looked at it, doesn't throw it. But he sees Goddard in the flat, who got open because he shoved the overhand defender, and it didn't get flagged. And he stared at it for 5 seconds and then finally threw it. It's like, that's got to be faster, like all around. And Hurts last year, 3.11 seconds from snap to throw, slowest league wide, like by a decent margin. That has to get faster. So can he get there? I think so. Will Sirianni help? I think absolutely. Hurts was in a bad situation last year. That team, sort of fell to pieces around Carson Wentz. But until I see it, I won't believe it. And then you look at the rest of the roster. I think the offensive line is still solid. The tight ends are still solid, but that's with Zach Ertz there. Maybe he does inevitably get moved, as we've wondered about all offseason. The receivers, Devonta Smith will certainly help. He's a fantastic receiver.
But he's out for what? The whole preseason now?
Yeah. And so, and then you look at the defensive side of the ball, they're trying to rebuild over there. Like, yeah, it's going to come down to Hurts, but there are some other issues as well.
Well, this is my argument for rebuild. Top 5 salary cap rainmakers on the Eagles' current roster. You got guys on the wrong side of their careers, Zach Ertz and Fletcher Cox, guys who have had issues staying healthy, Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson, and Brandon Graham, who has somehow managed to sidestep both designations. But that's kind of where they are. The interesting thing about Hurts to me is Doug Peterson asked him to perform like really hard shot plays in some very difficult situations, like, 3rd and long, going forward on 4th down in red zone. And Hurts was able to really do well in those situations. So he intrigues me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's an automatic, royal flush, let's go, but he could be something. My 25 is the Giants. I think Patrick Graham is going to get himself a head coaching job sooner than later. I also think that Jason Garrett should allow Daniel Jones to throw the deep ball more. Yep. Last season, throws with 20 or more air yards, Jones completed 18 of 39 passes for 617 yards, 506 air yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Stop being safe. And I know the scattered chart that you had on like the safe drive sustaining route concepts in your SIS presentation, the Giants were way over here. That's got to stop.
Yeah, there was no team that calls more what we termed on schedule concepts like curl flat and slants and tosser than the Giants. They were the most like conservative offense in our study.
24, you have the Broncos. I have the Broncos at 17. I'm very optimistic about their defense. Mike Munchak has turned Garrett Bowles into like a thing. Obviously, we all know what the question is.
Yeah. I mean, this roster, 21 of the 22 spots, I think are very good to great.
That's a top 3 defense. And I want to say this, everyone, okay, Brandon Staley is the new face of the NFL's new defense. 90% of the stuff he does in the NFL right now, he learned from Vic Fangio.
Yeah.
Let's not, put Vic out to pasture. Vic is leading the charge schematically for a lot of what happens. Now, should they have taken Justin Fields instead of Patrick Surtain is great, because I think Surtain is plug and play.
Yeah.
This season is going to be a referendum, and George Patton, this is his first year as GM. A lot of people will be looking back at the end of this season going, you guys should have taken Fields. And some people could lose their gigs over that. So that'll be interesting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I'm just going to say, we're recording this on Thursday. There were reports yesterday on Wednesday that get it run with the ones, Mr. Brett Rippon. I'm just going to say,
okay, so here comes the meerkat gift from Mark.
Yep. I mean, if you have a top 5 roster, a top 3 defense, and you just need somebody that's not going to really mess it up, and you want to know what insufferable looks like? Insufferable looks like me if Brett Rippon wins that job. I'm just going to say, I have to put it out there.
When was the last team that won the Super Bowl with an average quarterback and a great defense?
Buccaneers, Brad Johnson.
2015 Broncos. Before that, you have to go back to the 2002 Buccaneers. Before that, you have to go back to the 2000 Ravens. That's 3 teams in 21 years. Not a great hit rate.
It's not a good hit rate.
You're asking an impossible amount from your run game and your offensive line, and especially your defense.
I want to believe
it's not a good paradigm to have.
I just want to believe.
It's just not. I mean, hey, we'll see what happens. 24, I have the Arizona Cardinals, and Cliff, I'm starting to get a Chip Kelly hit from you. Cliff, you disappoint me. Last season, you came into the NFL and you tried to run the Texas Tech passing game for half a season, and then you got diverse and your offense went through the roof and it was all great. And then you come back and you're doing the same crap you did before. 20% of their snaps last year, 20 personnel. Bills were second with 15. I don't think anyone else had 10%. So he's gone back to, the Cartman thing. Screw you guys, I'm doing him. That's kind of who he is now. I'm going to do what I want. And I'm going to take DeAndre Hopkins and put him on the backside ISO, and I'm not going to move him 97% of the time. And, shoot your shot, dude. We have gone from Kyler Murray looking like a potential MVP candidate in 2020 to Kyler Murray kind of falling off the face of the earth. I think Cliff's in trouble.
I think so too.
I think the NFL has figured him out, and when the NFL figures you out, that was Chip's thing. I'm going to come in and I'm going to do blah 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 and revolutionize whatever. He's another example. I mean, Belichick got all of his speed no huddle stuff from Kelly, but it's not like he hired Kelly. He knew better than that. He knew what Chip Kelly was and what he wasn't. Maybe Cliff is just that guy. Maybe he needs to go, coach back in, I don't know. But this is a problem, and their defense, they have like the cornerback situation is horrid. Budda Baker's great. He doesn't cover. He's like Jamal Adams.
Yeah.
You have an offense that cannot create explosive plays. You have a defense that cannot stop explosive plays. You are screwed.
Yeah. And what was interesting when we did, rankings a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't have Murray in my top 15. I got a lot of pushback on that. I've had, people reach out to me like, what is it? I'm just not convinced that right now Murray is in a good position to be a top 15 quarterback, partly because of the issues you just highlighted with Cliff. I mean, the offense was static when it doesn't need to be. That offense should be dynamic. It's not. And that concerns me. Can Kyler still make splash plays like the spin and throw to, Dan Arnold that he had against the Patriots, where I literally had a notepad and threw it across the room because I was just like, how do you stop this? Yeah.
Well, Hail Murray, for God's sake. That was the most incredible play last season. But it's like I said before, if you cannot consist with Darnold, if you cannot consistently create the plays you need to create, I don't care how good you are in, 1 out of every 10 plays. Who gives a crap?
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe Murray and Kyler, Murray and Cliff and DeAndre Hopkins, and they all sort of put it together this year, but I'm not convinced it's going to happen. Maybe he did learn, Cliff did last year, because I know you and I talked about, Stephen Rees wrote about it, like the static with nature with Hopkins. It did seem like they moved him around a little bit more down the stretch last season. You have to do that. Need to see more of that. Maybe we'll see.
I just don't understand why coaches at this level need to be prodded into being schematically diverse. What the hell is your job?
I don't know.
It just kind of pisses me off.
Yeah.
Anyway, rant over. 23. You have the Giants. I have the Eagles. We've already kind of gone there. 22. I have the Raiders. I probably should have put them at 27 like you did. 22. You have the Panthers. We've discussed them. 21. You have the Cowboys, which is a lot lower than I have. So are you thinking that Dan Quinn cannot solve this? Are you thinking that Dak is not healthy? I mean, I can see what you wrote, but kind of tell us what your thoughts are on the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a believer in Dak, obviously. I mean, I think he was my QB6. Like, I still think he's
before he was hurt, he led the NFL in attempts, completions, passing yards, and he was like 4th in touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that was game script because they got, they were down in a number of games. They had to throw to get back into games. But I think that you're seeing anticipation and route recognition and all sorts of good stuff from Dak. It's the defense more than anything. I love our lads. We love our lads. And their depth charts are an invaluable resource. You go to their depth chart on our lads and you see on the defensive side of the ball a sea of green, which are rookies. They basically went all in on, we have to rebuild this defense. It's not just Micah Parsons in the first round, who I think was a good pick for what they needed, but you're also seeing Jabril Cox later in the draft. You're seeing Kelvin Joseph in the 2nd round, Israel Mokamu in the 6th round, Nashawn Wright in the 3rd round, Osa Odengizawa in the 3rd round, Quinta Bohanna in the 6th. They spent most of their draft capital on the defense because it was bad. Can Dan Quinn turn it around? Perhaps, but I also think in terms of figuring people out, teams have sort of figured out Quinn's cover 3, single high, the stuff that he does. Teams have sort of figured out how to attack that. Now Quinn has showed a bit more versatility over his past couple of years in Atlanta.
Yeah, he's not like Gus, where he's going to run 75% single high. Yeah, he's not that extreme. And I think he's astute enough to know that the NFL has figured out single high to a degree. Certainly, I mean, the Devontae Adams splits, 14 touchdowns against single high, 1 against double. It's like, okay, there we go.
Yeah,
there it is. Number 20, you have the Patriots. I have the Steelers. Your thoughts on the Pats? And yeah, I mean, where I am with Mac Jones, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the same conversation we had about Denver, you can apply here.
Yep.
You know, you talk to people in New England and they will tell you 21 to 22 positions they feel great about. You know, they feel great about the offensive line. They love the tight ends. They kind of like the receivers that they've got. They think Aguilar is going to be good. They love Jacoby Myers, Bourne and some of the other guys. Even N'Keal Harry has been a little bit better in camp, which I think is a nice little surprise. Defensively, they get Hightower back. You bring Van Noy back. They like Uche. Christian Barmore, he's dinged up right now, but he's been fantastic in camp. 21 to 22 positions they like. That 22nd is quarterback. And as we talked about with Denver, like, if you can't get stability and consistent execution at quarterback, you are going to struggle in this league. Mac Jones has been up and down in camp. Cam has been, dare we say, better than last year, but it's hard to get worse.
Well, we have to treat him as a rookie. He had no preseason because of COVID, and then he got COVID in season.
Yeah.
He's essentially a rookie in this system.
Yeah.
And we have to kind of treat him as such.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not closing the door on Cam having a much improved, 2021 season and looking maybe like the guy we saw in, say, 17, the year that they got to the playoffs and he looked pretty good, kind of willed them there.
That was the year Belichick called him public enemy number one. I'll tell you one thing. What is less flavorful than vanilla? Because that was their QB run game. I would expect more from that.
I would expect a lot
just because
more
McDaniels and Newton can work on some things.
Yeah. I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic we're going to get a better Cam. And if so, this could be a playoff team. If not, we're going to see Mac Jones at some point.
Oof. I have the Steelers at 20. Roethlisberger, I don't know. Matt Canada's coming in. He's going to do pre-snap motion. He's probably not going to do play action because Ben apparently doesn't like it. Again, you go back to the ability to create explosive plays and to stop them. Now, the Steelers have had some attrition in their secondary. They lost Bud Dupree. I am all in on Melvin Ingram. I love that signing. But if they regress from, say, first in defensive DVOA to, I don't know, 6 or 7, they got blown out by the Browns in one of the weirdest games I've ever seen.
Yeah.
How do they make that up? I don't think they're going to make it up on offense. I don't think Najee Harris is that guy. I think he'll be good. I think he'll be like Steven Jackson good. But that's not a team that's going to be able to define itself with its run game. And I don't know what the hell is going on with the offensive line. So when I say, I don't believe that regression is automatic. I don't go with the plexiglass principle. And if you were the best at something last year, it automatically means you're not going to be as good this year. I don't do that. But with the Steelers, you got to worry. And that offense, they started 11-0. That was because their defense is just playing that from front to back out of their minds. I don't know where they get the explosive plays from. And if they start to have leaks in stopping them, then you're kind of looking at Cleveland and Baltimore lapping you.
Yeah. I think
there you are.
During that 11-0 run to start the season, there was a lot of, and I mentioned time to throw earlier with Jalen Hurts. The fastest quarterback was Roethlisberger. And I think part of that was schematic. A big part of it.
Well, you and I were we started doing these, the preview podcast mid-season. And even when they were winning all their games, we were asking every week, should we be worried about Roethlisberger yet? And finally we were. But that was absolutely a thing that was even when they were winning. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see, 19. You have the Bears, who we've discussed. I have the Colts. Now, you have the Colts higher, but you wrote your power rankings before Injury Palooza. My opinion, the Quentin Nelson injury is 10 times worse for the Colts than the Wentz injury because, honestly, we don't know what the hell version of Wentz is going to be out there.
Yeah.
Wentz could be like Goff, but worse. Wentz could be kind of out of the league in a couple of years. So they have no quarterbacks who have ever taken an NFL snap. Maybe they get Foles, blah, blah, blah. This is a really well-built team without a credible quarterback. And as much advancement as they made in the run game last year, the guy driving that is now hurt. I don't think this ends well. Oh, by the way, here's their first 5 games.
Their first 5 games are
Seahawks,
brutal.
Rams, at Titans, at Dolphins, at Ravens. That's 4 playoff teams. And one team in the Dolphins who I think you and I both think very easily could be a playoff team this year. You could be looking at 0-5 or 1-4. You're not going to come back from that with Carson Wentz as your quarterback. I'm sorry. That's not going to happen.
What's even worse is after that first 5, you get the Texans. So yeah, you're probably going to win that game, but then you get the 49ers and then you get the Titans again. Their season series with Tennessee is early.
Yeah.
And so you could be looking at like a 5-game deficit. So even if you get those guys back, division might be done by then.
Yep. Nice segue. 18 for me is the Titans. Julio Jones and AJ Brown, good luck covering that. Derrick Henry has more yards after contact over the last 2 seasons. And then your running back has total rushing yards. It's a really easy division, but man, that defense.
Yeah.
They allowed 36 passing touchdowns. Only the Lions allowed more. Now you got Byard and Hooker, good safeties. I just don't know what that defense. Okay. So they win the AFC South. So what? That's like, winning a battle of the bands okay. Now you won like your school spelling bee. Now you go to county and everyone wants to kick your ass. What do you do then? Yeah. I mean, are the Titans able to, Vrabel's never had a losing record and maybe they go, 11-6 or whatever. And they're sort of in the hunt and they get blown out and the defense is still bad. And okay, where are we now?
Yeah. They almost seem like a team that could be stuck in sort of purgatory where it's like, you're going to win the division because you look around the AFC South right now, but can you see this defense going into Arrowhead and stopping the Chiefs?
Oh God.
Or heck, going to First Energy Stadium and stopping the Browns.
No. Well, we'll talk about the Browns a little later. So 18 for you, Minnesota Vikings. I had them a little higher, but good Lord, as I pointed out, Mike Zimmer is like one of the more no bullshit coaches in the NFL. And his team right now is nothing but bullshit. The COVID stuff, and then they released Gladney after the indictment. I don't know what to think here. I probably should have ranked them lower. I think 18 is fair.
Yeah. There are good things about this team. But they're kind of also a mess right now, given the sort of COVID situation. They're running out there with Case Cookus and Jake Browning as their quarterbacks until, Mond and Cousins get out of COVID protocol.
Well, Cousins was released from COVID protocol this morning. But of course, the way he is, he'll probably get it, be a close contact again because the Vikings have the lowest vaccination rate. And apparently they're going to be the team that has to forfeit a freaking game to figure it out. Oh, maybe this is bad. Maybe I should get a shot. Vault. I had the Broncos at 17. I am very high on everything but quarterback. I don't get it with Locke. Never have. You have the Colts at 17. Let's see. You at 16, Dr. Schofield, have the 49ers. Is your 16 with the Niners based on Garoppolo or Lance? And how much of it has to do with a belief that the injury luck, because they led the league by like 30 games and adjusted games lost. How much of a bump you think they're going to get from that?
Yeah, it's based more on Garoppolo starting the season as their starting quarterback, but I think that ship might have sailed. I think it's
kind of looking like it.
Yeah, you brought up the sort of Russell Wilson, Matt Flynn situation, and
I'll tell the story real quick. Well, I was standing next to Liz Matthews at Russell Wilson's first rookie minicamp practice. And he hit a backdoor fade over a rookie cornerback to a rookie receiver. I don't remember who it was. And I turned to Liz and I said, I don't care how much they're playing Matt Flynn. That's the quarterback. And a lot of the veterans in San Francisco are saying, we were really impressed by Trey Lance. Holy crap, this QB run game. Holy crap, he makes these throws. Well, you went into that locker room in the preseason in 2012. Nobody was talking about Matt Flynn. It was like, who the hell is this Russell Wilson guy? We're really impressed. It gets to the point where you're not worried about demoting the veteran because the locker room likes him. You're worried about open revolt because the kid is obviously better in every possible way. And athletically, Garoppolo isn't in Lance's area code. And as you pointed out in a very astute article, a lot of what North Dakota State ran last year was Kyle Shanahan concepts, fallback, wham, whatever, QE or a tight end throw. It's not an impossibility for Lance to come out and look credible early in the season.
Yeah. And so I do think he will open up sections of that playbook with Kyle Shanahan that were closed when you had Matt Ryan, when you had Kirk Cousins, when you had Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
And, I think of all the boot action, the concepts that they run off of that. Imagine being that curl flat defender when you've got a route over the top of you potentially, or at least in front of you, and Trey Lance rolling in your direction. Like you have to worry about what he's going to do.
And now you've got people, now you got people saying, well, they'll start Garoppolo and have Trey Lance in a package like Taysom Hill. Can you name one time in the history of the damn NFL where your backup quarterback had a situational 4-play package and it ever worked?
Nope.
No, you can't, because it never has worked. It's always stupid. Don't take your best quarterback off the field to put the other guy in there.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. Oh, speaking of, at number 16, I have the Saints.
No.
I want it to work for Jameis Winston.
Yep.
I really do. I think he's taking it seriously. I think he's doing everything he can. Maybe the LASIK will work. I also, if Taysom Hill comes in and is like just league average, if he throws 15 touchdowns and 15 interceptions, the fact that he throws 15 touchdowns, I will never be able to listen to an NFL broadcast ever again, because every one of those announcers is going to name their kids Taysom, boy or girl. The amount of love this guy gets from broadcasters, and somebody was saying on the NFL Network yesterday, well, what you need is a guy like Taysom Hill who can do everything. Like everything, what? To what end? Like to what level? To what degree of effectiveness? Anyway, so from 2014 through 2016, Drew Brees had more passing attempts, completions, and passing yards than any other NFL quarterback, and only Aaron Rodgers had more passing touchdowns. Saints wasted all that productivity with horrible defenses, finished 7-9 in all 3 seasons. Welcome to the inverse, Sean Payton, because that's where you are now. You got a top 3 defense, and you have what at quarterback? We'll see.
Yeah.
Let's see. 16 for you. Okay, yeah, 49ers. So 15 for me, Minnesota Vikings. We've talked about that mess. You have the Chargers at 15. I had them top 10. I'm interested in your thoughts about that.
It's mostly, can Justin Herbert do it again? Now, I think he can. But we have seen, the proverbial, the old saw, now they're going to have film on him. I certainly think he's an immensely talented quarterback. He's one of my top 15 already. So I am a believer. But then you look around the AFC West and you get Kansas City twice. Denver's got a good roster. They got to figure out quarterback. Who knows?
They're going to have a top 3 defense. If everyone stays healthy, Denver's going to have a top 3 defense.
And, I think Staley has the pieces to sort of replicate the defense he had with the Rams. Obviously, Bosa. If Derwin James is healthy, I think he's, a dynamic safety in this league. But can you sort of build that same kind of defense? Maybe. Asante Samuel Jr. is going to be a nice fit. I think he's going to be a fit, like we've talked about. Chris Harris, also a nice piece there.
Murray, they're going from really heavy single high to really heavy 2 high.
Yeah.
There's a lot of adaptation there. I don't care how good Brandon Staley is. I don't care how good their players are. Now, getting Samuel helps. Obviously, having Derwin James as the it's the 4 lock where you're playing quarters, but you're just putting your star on one guy or one part of the field. I mean, I think Derwin James can't maybe do that to Jalen Ramsey's level. Maybe he can. We'll see.
I mean, we've seen clips of him running with Keenan Allen, and anytime you can match a Keenan Allen route, you're doing something pretty good.
Yes.
So that potential is there. It's just not all in yet. And maybe this is just the battle scars of years past, going all in on the Chargers in the preseason, and then injuries or whatever happens and they fall to pieces.
What's fascinating about the Chargers, they had in, I think it was 99, they had Ryan Leaf, and then in 2000, they had Zombie Doug Flutie. And then in 2001, they had Drew Brees, went right to Phillip Rivers, went right to Justin Herbert. They've had like 20 years. I'm not counting Herbert, but they had 20 years of like Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
And they won very little. I'll blame AJ Smith for a lot of that. He went all Joe Thomas and, did whatever, but Yeah. I'm a bit higher on the Chargers, and I think Fields will be, oh, my head is full of just stuff. Herbert, excuse me. I think Herbert will be just fine. Let's see. So 14, you've got the Saints. 14, I have the Washington football team. This could be the best defense in the NFL. I have no idea what to expect from Ryan Fitzpatrick. Not a clue. But if he dispenses with the YOLO crap, this is a team. We were talking about like how many teams get to a Super Bowl with the game manager quarterback and the like historically great defense. I'm not saying this will happen, but if there was one sort of surprise upending team in the NFC who could actually pull that off. And remember, they played the Buccaneers hellaciously close in that playoff game last year. That could have gone either way. I think, and the Washington football team has actually upped their vaccination rate after their coach expressed concern. So kudos for getting above the fray there. I think this, I don't know if it's an easy division winner depending on Dallas, but this team is going to be a problem on defense, like a big problem.
I mean,
I graded the William Jackson signing higher than any free agency signing this year. It's ridiculous. They got him for what they got him for.
It's the marriage of pass rush with the front that they've built, which was their strength last year.
Still four first rounders after Ryan Kerrigan went to the Eagles. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. But now you've got Jackson at one corner spot. You've got Fuller at the other. You've got St. Juste, who they drafted. I like the safety tandem of Curl and Collins. They were pretty good last year.
Collins can be a box guy, and then box enforcer, and Curl can run deep. And Curl came out of nowhere and just balled out. So it was great.
This could be a good team.
Yeah, I think so. Let's see. You had the Cardinals at 13. I had the 49ers at 13. And I think Lance will get, sooner than later. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
12, you have the Steelers. So are you betting on more explosive plays on the offense, or are you thinking that there won't be defensive regression despite the sort of attrition in the secondary?
It's more the bet on the regression because I have concerns about this offense. I have concerns about Ben. I have concerns about the offensive line. I think the defense, though, will help them in some situations. They won't sort of collapse. And so
I'm not saying they're going to suck. I'm just saying they're going to go from maybe first to fifth, sixth, seventh.
Yeah. And that might be enough to keep them out of the playoffs. It might.
And when you can't create explosive plays and you have any sort of defensive regression, well, okay. Where's it going to come from? Your punts?
Yeah.
You got to make it up somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was my 12 or your 12. My 12 is Miami Dolphins. Obviously, Tua is the thing here. And, he blew it up against the Chargers and the Cardinals, and then had to be benched against Vic Fangio's defense. Here's what I wrote about Tua. He has the tools to be an above average timing rhythm passer. Not going to blow your doors off with the deep ball. This defense and run game, Dolphins don't need him to. But this offense is built for a point guard distributor. At his best, that's exactly what Tua is. I can't wait to see Jalen Waddle just blow it. He's so ridiculous. They got another problem. Xavier Howard is capital, not capital happy. And he is, if I remember correctly, he was the only guy who made our top 11 outside cornerbacks and top 11 slot cornerbacks list. This guy is a top 3 cornerback, no matter what.
Yeah.
And they depend a lot on cover zero blitz. They want those ISO island guys. We'll see. I think Flores is doing a great job. I think he has officially escaped the Belichick assistant curse, which good for him. But yeah, there's mysteries abound, as they say. I have the Patriots at 11. I still can't believe the stat. Last year, the Patriots lined up with 2 tight ends just 8 times on passing plays.
Yeah,
they're gonna outpace that in the first drive.
Yeah,
it's going to be fun.
Their first 20 plays might be 12 personnel.
Yep, exactly. You have the Rams at 11. I had the Rams at 10. So let's talk about the Rams. Per Peter King, Aaron Donald recently went over and hugged Matthew Stafford mid-practice. I really don't want to just bag on Jared Goff all day, but man, I'm a little concerned about. It's kind of like with the Chargers going from heavy single, because Raheem Morris really isn't a quarters guy.
Right.
It's not his history. He went from sort of a Tampa 2 Dungy acolyte to pretty aggressive man. And the Rams still have a lot of they have maybe the best player in the NFL, certainly the best defensive player. They got Ramsey. Darius Williams is extremely underrated, but they lost Johnson, their green dot guy on defense. They lost Troy Hill, both of the Browns. We'll be talking about in a second. I don't know. I mean, maybe this is the year that Sean McVay's offense is revealed to be everything it was supposed to be, and it doesn't matter. But
I mean, I just think
a little bit of an issue on defense there.
Yeah, I mean, they do have an issue on defense. I just think the upgrade from Goff to Stafford is
it's going to be so much more than some people think.
Yeah. I mean, just the fact that there's a quarterback now that will play with no fear. And we all know what happens to offenses when defenses can take away what you want to do. And that's what teams figured out with the Rams, with Goff. Now the vertical shot stuff, that's all the underneath stuff, the eye candy, the crossers and all that stuff that McVay likes to call. There's always a vertical shot play over the top of them. And Goff would 9 times out of 10 not even look at it. Now you've got a guy that wants to throw that on every play.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So my 10 was the Rams. Your 10 was the Seahawks. Shane Waldron is playing it very close to the vest. What will this offense look like? I can tell you that what this defense looks like is a league average defense at best. And again, if your defense is that way and you're not interested in creating explosive plays in the passing game consistently, you are not going to get very far. And I have talked to a few people in the league. A couple of people have reached out to me just because I'm in Seattle and asked me, watching Russell Wilson in the second half of the season, like he was playing like garbage. What the hell's going on? It was a toxic situation in every possible way. He's very excited about Waldron. I think, pre-snap motion, tempo, the way Sean McVay uses 12 personnel as 11 personnel with those tight splits. I mean, it opens up rushing lanes, which should make Pete Carroll happy. But this team will only go so far as Russell Wilson takes it, because the pass rushes, we'll see. Quandre Diggs is great. Not sure at all about the corners. And, you're going to have to pay Jamal Adams $19 million a year because you gave up like Wenatchee for him. Could be interesting.
Yeah. But if there's a quarterback that could deliver, it's one of the guys that's a top 5-6 quarterback in the game.
Which he invariably is. I think it all fell apart late. As things often do. It's one of those, no good decisions are made at 2 a.m. Let's see. Number 9, I have the Cowboys. I am a firm believer that the coaching job Mike Nolan did was so bad. And I know Dan Quinn a little from his time in Seattle. I have a great deal of respect for him. You will see a lot of interesting front stuff because Dan's really good at that. I think Trevon Diggs could be a total breakout guy with Quinn. That's what I have. You have the Dolphins at 9. So you're higher on them than I am.
Yeah. And what's been funny is watching Dolphins media, Dolphins Twitter start to see the new Tua, the real Tua. I think it was interesting, that SIS data challenge. The Dolphins were one of the more sort of conservative offensive play calling teams we had. And it's because you're trying to figure it out with Tua. Eric Rowe this week came out and said, we didn't let him throw deep. Now you're seeing healthy Tua, his first, real sort of non-COVID training camp.
You do have to remember the hip injury. And
the Xavier Howard situation has really unfolded since I wrote about them.
Yeah.
So that's a concern to be sure.
Trust me, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad. It's worse than you think.
Yeah. But the Tua stuff has me hopeful for Miami.
Yeah. 8, you have Washington foosball team.
Yep.
8, I have the Seahawks. 7, I have the Chargers. I'm really high on this team. I don't think they're ready to challenge the Chiefs yet, but the rear view mirror, the object is closer than it appears with the Chargers.
Yeah.
I think so. You have the Packers at 7. I have the Packers at 5. Is really, I mean, I'm not worried about the offense. I'm not worried about Rodgers. I think Rodgers will play. He might be even better because Aaron Rodgers lives on spite in a way that very few people do. I think,
Great ones tend to.
It's whether the defense gets in the way. I don't know what Joe Barry's going to do. I know they ran a crap ton of dime last year. They're 50% dime, far more than any other team. Joe Barry's record is not great. We'll see how that goes. They have a top 5 safety in Savage. They have a top 3 safety in Jair Alexander. I would expect Zadarius Smith to make a big comeback from what was kind of an injury-plagued year. As we've said before, you double Kenny Clark because you have to. You single everyone else. I think the defense is the only thing that stops this team from going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
but it's a thing.
I mean, you mentioned it, our tagline about this team last year: double Kenny Clark, and you're fine everywhere else. Did they help Kenny Clark? Did they get him a running mate? Not really.
No, there you go.
So yeah,
question answers itself. Now you, Dr. Schofield, wow, Tennessee Titans at 6.
Yeah,
you are Mr. Julio Jones.
Yeah, I am. I just look at what he can still bring to the table. I think it's such a perfect fit conceptually for what they want to do off of play action, Yankee variants. In the data challenge last night, Joe Andruzzi, one of the other participants, talked about basically Yankee posting over was the best. He found it was the best concept in the NFL. AJ Brown on the over, Julio on the post. AJ Brown on the post, Julio on the blaze out. Like it all comes together perfectly. Good offensive line, fantastic running back in Derrick Henry. Like I'm all in on what this offense is going to look like. The question, as we talked about with them, is the defense. I talked myself into it, but I can see where it sort of falls to pieces.
I don't think they've done enough. I just don't. I think they have, well, they got Dupree. They got, they've expanded the pass rush a little bit, but
yeah,
it's just the whole thing. And I think the reason I'm low on Tennessee and the reason I'm high on Atlanta can be summed up in 2 words: Dean Pease.
Yeah. That makes sense.
This guy just makes things better wherever he goes. So number 6, you have the Titans. I have the Browns, who you have at 5. Here's an interesting exercise if you're listening at home or in your car or working out at the gym or anywhere else. Go to Our Lads or Roto World or wherever, NBC Edge or whatever they're calling it. Look at the Cleveland Browns roster and tell me where the hole is. Keep going. Oh, your answer? There is no hole. The main problem they had last year was, and it was, Grant Delpit, their first round pick, got hurt. They had 4 box guys trying to play deep safety. They don't have that problem anymore because Delpit's coming back. He's a multi-position guy. They got Owusu Kurumara. He's a multi-position guy. Kind of shores up their linebacker stuff, which was a problem. John Johnson, the aforementioned Brandon Staley green dot guy. Denzel Ward's top 5 corner. The offense, I mean, I'm not going to say that they're the best team in the AFC, but I find it's like it's almost like they're the not worst team in the AFC, if that makes sense. They have the fewest potential issues based on roster construction.
I just love what they've put together. I love how they looked at. I love the NFL offseason because of the free agency period, the draft period. Teams have to make decisions, and those decisions are the best window you ever get into how they feel about their roster. What did Cleveland do? They go out and they get John Johnson at safety. They go out and they get Troy Hill for cornerback.
Which they were garbage in the slot, and Hill solves that right away.
They draft a corner. They draft the sort of versatile positionless defender in JOK. They basically said, we couldn't stop Patrick Mahomes in the divisional round. We need to stop Patrick Mahomes in the divisional round next year. And this is how we're going to do it. And we haven't even mentioned Jadeveon Clowney. Like, I know he's not what he once was, but to put him opposite Myles Garrett, Like,
Yeah.
if you're an offensive coordinator, it's like, we're slotted protection, we're chipping miles, we're doing all that stuff. That's just going to leave Jadeveon with one-on-one situations on the other side.
Here's what Clowney generally does. He is proto Lawrence Taylor for a game or two.
Yeah.
I'll never forget when he was in Seattle. They had one game against the Niners where I rarely have seen a defensive player take over a game like that. And then 14 games he's on a milk carton. Good against the run, very little in the pass rush. And that's whether he's an end or a spinner. So we'll see.
But I mean, you're right. This is I think it's
very, I mean, he didn't bust out when people were trying to deal with JJ Watt either. So
right.
I don't know.
Right. But it is very easy to talk yourself into the Cleveland Browns, and there are good reasons to do it.
As I put it, this is the first Browns team that has the capacity to challenge for multiple championships since Whitesnake was relevant.
Yeah.
Because believe it or not, kids, Whitesnake was once relevant.
They were.
It was that bad. Okay, so number 4, both of us, Baltimore Ravens. And, you know, as I wrote for the team that hasn't had a losing season since 2015, Ravens sure have a lot of people talking about their one glaring issue. But when your one glaring issue is the quarterback, that's going to happen. They get Rashad Bateman, who is their best contested catch receiver since Anquan Boldin. Not a coincidence that Boldin was a big part of their last Super Bowl team. They get Sammy Watkins, who, as long as he's not your primary focus, can make some plays and get some yards. You know, whether you think it's a Greg Roman problem or a Lamar Jackson problem, I tend to go about 70% Lamar, about 30% Roman. We went, you know, we said unanimous MVP after the 2019 season. Spent a lot of last year going, whose fault is it? And I don't know if I don't know where that stands.
Yeah. I mean, Ben Solak now with the Rainer. Congrats, Ben. He had a little Twitter thread. Ben. He had a little Twitter thread last night on Greg Roman. And he was just like, Greg Roman makes my head hurt. Because there were some concepts last year where it's like, I don't know what they're doing. Now, their run game stuff is incredible. Their quarterback.
Well, I would counter that. I wrote about this. I wrote an extensive tape piece back when you could have tape, NFL Game Pass. Roman also opened up a lot of things for Lamar that Lamar didn't see or didn't execute well. So, and it's odd, you know, you like the quarterback has all these gifts and he can be special. So you want to blame the offensive coordinator because he's not Bill Walsh.
Yeah.
Greg Roman has been doing this kind of stuff with Colin Kaepernick and Tyrod Taylor and now Lamar Jackson. Greg Roman is what Greg Roman is. You don't get him and expect him to be Bruce Arians. That's not who Greg Roman is. Never has been. So if you have a guy who, you know, works the QB run concepts in with the rest of the integrated run game to have the best rushing attack in the NFL, and he is putting more expansive passing concepts out there than people think, and your quarterback isn't seeing or executing them, well, then whose fault is it? Or whose responsibility? The point is not to you know, stick fault. It's to assess responsibility and then how do you solve it?
Right. No, I think that's a very good point.
Defense, no problem. Run game, no problem. This season is a referendum on Lamar. And oh, by the way, the Ravens are in a position to have to pay Lamar $70 bazillion. So that's fine.
Yeah.
Number 3 for both of us, Buffalo Bills. I was asked, well, Aaron and Mike and I on the podcast last week, we all did our Super Bowl picks. I have the Bills beating the Packers.
Really?
Yep. I think this is just a team with a lot of edges. You know, they're as I wrote, they're kind of boring because outside of Cole Beasley's bull crap, it's like everything's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. The run game, you know, a few little things on the offensive line. The Rousseau pick, the first round pass rusher, really interesting sort of one shade head over center guy. And then Carlos Basham. That he reminds you a little bit of Carl Lawson. That guy plays with an edge, ferocious knife edge. So they're, you know, they get the pass rush together. Linebackers fine, secondary great. I think getting Dabble for another year. I don't think they'll have him next year.
No, absolutely not.
And I don't, you know, we were talking about like, okay, so Josh Allen made this insane 30-year jump. Obviously, he's going to regress because that's what people do. I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so. You know, Isaiah McKenzie is a great slot receiver. They got Emmanuel Sanders. So, you know, if if Captain America, Freedom Boy, gets himself in trouble, they've got other guys who can handle that. And they ran, I believe, more 4 receiver sets than anyone else in the league, not named Cliff Kingsbury. And they've got the guys to do that. Tight end, they don't really have one, but apparently they don't really need one. They
end up trading for Ertz like everybody expects.
Yeah, I mean, they had 38 snaps with 2 tight ends.
Yeah.
Only the Patriots had fewer. So, and they're not looking to change that paradigm. I think the Bills are as good as any team in the NFL.
Yep.
And, best Bills team since the Marv Levy teams. And what's the one thing you can do that maybe Marv didn't? As Jake Taylor said, win the whole bleeping thing. I think they could.
Yeah.
Number 2, we're not quite chalk. I have the Buccaneers. You have the Chiefs.
Yeah.
What about the Chiefs? Or is it more that the Buccaneers are so set to run it back, or there's still things about the Chiefs that you're wondering about?
It's more that the Buccaneers are set to run it back. And I'm a firm believer. We know when we love Matt Waldman, we think the world of him.
Yes.
And back in like late May, when Matt was sending me messages about how Brady's going to be even better next year, I started to pay attention. And I'm a firm believer now in that idea, because now we're hearing Brady, we played last year with a torn MCL.
Mm-hmm.
He told us that he was struggling calling plays deep into the season.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you think about that loss to the Chiefs and their bye week and everything that me and everybody else, we all wrote about this team. Brady was struggling to figure out the Arians offense. That's removed. Brady's healthy. They're bringing everybody back. They, the Kyle Trask pick, it's because they had the luxury to just, hey, we'll just take a quarterback, whatever. We don't have a ton of needs. I think the Buccaneers are going to be great this year.
Well, it was interesting. And I wrote about this recently. After the Football Outsiders, all when that came out, and I had some, and everyone go out and buy that, kids, because it's awesome. From weeks 1 to 12, the Bucs used play action on 18.5% of their plays, 31st in the league, despite the fact that their yards per play with play action. But I'll summarize this because it's like 3 paragraphs.
Right.
Late in the season, much more play action, much more pre-snap motion, which Brady always feasted on in New England. And Arians went from, I'm not going to do that because I didn't do it with Peyton Manning, sounding like a grumpy old guy telling you to get the hell off his lawn, to I am now enlightened. Here we go. Brady's going to be better for a number of reasons. One of them is he starts the season with that sort of diversity. That's it. Not motion to inform. He's Tom Brady. He doesn't need motion to inform. It's motion to create matchup disadvantages for a defense.
Yeah. And the other thing that
add that to everything else, and congratulations to Todd Bowles for getting a 3-year extension. Totally deserved. That defense is also insane. We talk about the ability to create explosive plays and to stop them. I would say that there are very few teams better at either one than the Buccaneers down the stretch. And to be able to have both at that level, I mean, they just peaked. And if they come in at that 1,000-mile-an-hour pace, I mean, yeah, watch the hell out.
Yeah. Now, I mean, for the Chiefs, though, we talked about the Browns and how they clearly had, as an organization, a need to address. The Chiefs, they looked at the Super Bowl and said, we got to protect 15. We got to protect 15. It's
not just that. And you and I have discussed this, and I wrote about it last week. I think you're looking at a very different offense this year, because what do they do?
That too.
They trade for Orlando Brown Jr. from Baltimore. What is Baltimore? The most prolific and power counter trap, wham, kick your ass.
Yep.
They take Creed Humphrey from Oklahoma in the 2nd round. Per SIS, Humphrey over his 3 years with the Sooners in man run blocking concepts. To his gap, running backs ran 6.9 yards per carry. They signed Joe Thuney. You know very well. Now, the Patriots run everything from zone to split zone to man. You know very well how important it is for Patriots offensive linemen, and Thuney has always been great, to be able to execute those man-on-man power concepts. I think the Chiefs are going to go from a primary zone team to a variable line group. And Andy Reid, remember, he's a line coach. going way back. So him and Andy Heck, they can execute this. This will be a transitional issue, but imagine giving defenses one more thing to think about. Not just a pass pro, not just opening stuff up for Edwards-Helaire and all that, but imagine just from a blocking perspective and figuring out what people are doing in protections, giving defenses one more thing to think about with all that you already have to think about when you're facing the Chiefs. So I don't think it's just a new offensive line. I think it's a sea change in their overall philosophy. And I think Andy used this sort of scrap Fisher, scrap Schwartz. We're going to start all over. We're not going to replace like as like. This is now what I want to do. And Andy has been ahead of the game as far as trends for a long time. He was, people used to laugh at spread game coordinator. They're not laughing now.
No.
I think if you add what Tyrann Mathieu is the second best defensive player in the NFL, in my opinion. It's Aaron Donald and it's Mathieu. He is the best slot defender in the league. He's the best or second best safety in the league. I can't think of any other guy in the NFL at any positions where you can say he's top at one and top at another position. And especially in the value offenses, the value to defenses with being able to put guys in multiple positions. And they have to re-sign him. Tyrann Mathieu's value, I think, is almost as high as any player. L'Jarius Sneed came out of nowhere. Chris Jones has lost a little weight. They're going to move him around. He's already a freak. To me, Kansas City Chiefs are going to be the best team in football. That doesn't mean to me they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I think they're set up to be the best team, the hardest team to stop, the hardest team to beat.
Now, the tough thing for them, though, is you look at the AFC versus the NFC just on the whole.
Yeah.
They'll have the tougher road.
Yes.
I mean, you're talking about Buffalo, you're talking about Cleveland, you're talking about Baltimore. Like, whoever gets out of the AFC to the Super Bowl will have earned it, I think. I just think it's a deeper conference.
Well, the thing always with the Chiefs is who has the capacity to either roll with them on offense or stop them on defense, or do both.
I think Buffalo and Cleveland right now.
Yeah. I don't think Baltimore.
I mean, they'll have to get much better.
You can't run the ball against Patrick Mahomes when Patrick Mahomes is healthy and protected. You can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to get better in the passing game to do it.
You got to punch your weight. So anyway, you have the Bucks as number one. I have the Chiefs as number one. Do you think now the Buccaneers are the first team since the 1979 Steelers to return all 22 of their starters? Steelers were Super Bowl champs in 13 and 14 as a result. Do you see the Buccaneers running it back?
Sitting here right now, I do.
It wouldn't surprise me one bit.
Yeah. I mean, it is hard to do. It is incredibly hard to do.
Almost 20 years since it's happened. 03, 04 Pats.
As somebody that is 7 months older, almost to the day than Tom Brady, like, you get dinged, it takes a little bit longer to recover. Now, maybe
they had, by the way, they had the lowest adjusted games lost in the NFL last year.
Yeah.
Something like 30. And the Niners had like 160 something. So
yeah, you need some injury luck.
That doesn't always mean anything, but it usually means something.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So, I mean, that's something to keep in mind. But sitting here right now, early August, I think they can run it back.
Yeah. Well, could be a Bucks Chiefs rerun. I see it going a different way, but I'll go with the Bills. I'm not just doing that to make Chris Perone happy.
Yeah, I kind of see Bucks Bills in the Super Bowl.
That would be fascinating.
Yeah,
that would be fascinating. Cool. Well, all right, Mr. Data Bowl, Mr. Data Guy. We've got almost 2 hours. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Whew. All right. I'm going to post this bad boy, and happy football tonight, everybody. And Mark and I will be starting up the pod once again, and off we go.
Off we go.
All right, man. Take care. We'll talk soon.
You too, my friend.